your superpower. So we all come to Dharma practice and to the spiritual practice for differing reasons. Many come to steady and calm themselves in rough waters if they feel agitated and perhaps looking for some temporary relief from agitation. And some of us take it as a retreat from the sort of humdrum of daily life. But the way I like to see Dharma practice is that curiosity, intelligence, and investigation are even more important to me than this sense of calm or retreat. So to practice the Dharma is really a non-stop adventure of curiously looking into the content of your life in a really deep way, to see your mind in action, to really know yourself. And there are two very important ways to use this superpower, this curiosity, this interest and attention. The first way to use curiosity in your practice is to notice what's right here, right now. And we can do this in any moment of a day, is to really receive and notice your direct experience. So the immediacy of what's happening in any given moment. So this is a curiosity that doesn't need the cognitive mind. It doesn't need any thinking about. It's a feeling, sensing, receptive quality of mind. Yeah. So it's simply to open up and land in your experience fully awake. Unfortunately, we do a lot of sleepwalking through our life. We're sort of numbed out, distracted out, and certainly not in our body. So this curiosity is an invitation to really feel and sense the moment through all your sense doors, your 6 sense doors, without analyzing or interpreting anything that you're experiencing. Sounds, smells, touch, what you're hearing, what you're tasting, what you're thinking. Thinking is the 6th sense door. But of course, our minds love thinking. I don't know if you've noticed that about your own mind. And so often when we're experiencing a sound or touch, even just doing that practice of touching your own chest, the mind loves then to analyze and figure things out. But this curiosity is simply being in a very direct way with taste, with touch, noticing thoughts, noticing what you can see without any analysis. So it's just being with your immediate information, what's coming through as moment-to-moment experience. And this is a very important part of practice because it wakes us up to the truth of the moment, out of the sort of trance of speculation and imagination. We land more squarely into our lives. And this is a beautiful practice to do when you're caught up in some internal drama. Is just come back to your senses. And we have 6 senses. The Buddha described the 6 senses. And he was suggesting to spread your awareness evenly across the 6 senses. So I'm going to forget them all, but touch, taste, smell, sight, help me, hearing. And the other one was the mind itself, the thinking mind. But of those 6 senses, I don't know about you, but I spend so much of my time in that 6th sense, in the thinking. I don't, how much time do you spend in your smelling sense? Hardly any. In your hearing sense. Imagine if you could spread evenly your time and awareness across your 6 senses. So this is a real invitation to get curious if you let your sense doors open and really receive the raw data of being alive. Yeah. So you might have noticed that if you've gone on retreat, how your senses just expand, and the greens are really green, and the caterpillars are fascinating. You know, the detail of life and the sounds. Today I could hear all these birds when I went on a walk. Beautiful birds. And that's a training of the mind to keep coming back to your sensory experience. So this is a really adventurous curiosity of what's happening in your experience right in the moment, what you're in contact with, or what's happening in your body, you know, getting interested what's happening in your belly. And I really recommend you do that hourly. What's happening in my belly right now? What information's in there? What sensations are happening in my chest, yeah, in my throat? So this is a very embodied curiosity. We're letting go of the why of experience. Why is this happening? And we're simply entering into the what is happening. Yeah? We're not analyzing, you know, why is that bird singing? Or we're just seeing with bare attention to what you're feeling in the body in this moment. So you're using your direct experience, or taking what is called in the Zen tradition beginner's mind approach to bringing a childlike fascination. I don't know if you've ever had that experience in your Dharma practice of feeling like a child again. I remember on retreat, I had 2 whole days where I felt about 3 years old. And I felt like this giant toddler walking around, and my mind had really slowed down. And you just feel what it would be like to be 3 again. When you watch a 3-year-old and everything is fascinating when you're 3, when you're 2, when you're 1, and then things get a little dull when you're 56. Until you remember to wake up again, yeah? To really wake up and get really curious again. So it's a superpower you can have at 56 or 96 or even beyond. So this is a willingness to open up and to be really present right in this moment. And you can do this in the context of even the unpleasant. So if you have discomfort in the body, you can bring that same sort of wonder and interest, curious interest, into what you might call pain. So it is a way of working with discomfort in the body. You know, where is the sensation, how big it is? And you don't even have to use questions. You're just feeling your way in to the experience of what might be sensed as discomfort. Yeah. Because we so often think we know about aches and pains in the body, but do you really know? Have you really paid a curious, non-analyzing attention to that niggle in the knee, or that tension in the shoulder? You know, really paid curious, non-judging awareness to it. We have concepts in our minds about what we believe these discomforts are, but we don't investigate with this fresh attention. So with this beginner's mind, we can discern what is the sensation, where is it, how big is it? And when we attend to sensations like this, from this curious open mind, what happens then? I wonder if you've had that experience. And we can bring this curiosity also to watching the breath in meditation, which is something we do in a more formal practice, because the mind assumes it knows the breath. Well, I've done a lot of breathing in the past and they all seem the same. But if the mind is really curious, and I don't know if you had this experience tonight, if you really wake up and stop assuming that you know the breathing in and you know the breathing out, each breath is discrete and different. It's fascinating. You get interested, is that in-breath longer? And you don't even need to ask these questions, you're just feeling. Or is it the breathing out that's longer? The other day I was doing breath meditation, and after every 3rd breath, my body just held the breath out for about 15 seconds. I had no idea why. And I stopped getting curious about why, but it would breathe in, it would breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. The body breathed in and out, and then there was this pause. I don't know. And then what happened again? In, out, in, out, in, out. And then it would just pause again. And I was just fascinated, really like a child, just, oh, wow, this is fascinating. I did it again this morning. It wasn't doing it, because it's all impermanent. So this is the invitation of being curious to moment by moment attention. So let's try this now. Very simple experience, a practice of curiosity. Just invite you where you're sitting now. You can do this with eyes open or eyes closed. You don't have to change your posture. It might help to close the eyes if you come to. I want you just to get curious and notice, is your right hand or your left hand warmer? Okay. So you don't need a lot of effort, you don't need a lot of questions, you're just directing your attention. You're interested, you're curious. The second way of working with curiosity is to see into the deepest layers of our mind's patterns of thinking, feeling, perceiving, and fabricating. To see into, with a gentle, compassionate, and curious attention, our relationship to all of our experience. Most particularly, the Buddha said, when you're stressed, anxious, and dissatisfied. So this is the teaching of the first noble truth, to recognize and to bring mindfulness to the truth of when suffering arises. So in the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha is giving us this instruction to get really interested in the truth of difficulty. And then in the second Noble Truth, he says, get interested in how it arises. What is the mechanism for this discomfort, this dis-ease, this dissatisfaction? What is holding it in place? So this is when curiosity becomes a real superpower, because this is the opportunity for what he said in the third Noble Truth is freedom, to be free of this suffering. If you're really interested in what's holding the whole drama together, yeah? But you need this superpower, you need this curiosity of investigation to see how you relate to pleasant and unpleasant conditions. He called Vedana. And Vedana is this primal impulse of the mind to prefer or not prefer an experience, to receive it as something that's pleasant or unpleasant. And then the pleasant conditions, grasping, and the unpleasant conditions, aversion. But his instruction is see that happening in your own mind with curiosity. Don't just learn it as something you hear about in a Dharma text, but can you see that happening in your own mind? If you're really curious, you can. So there's another impulse of mind. There's craving, aversion, and then there's this delusion of mind, a mind that's just not interested. It's dulled out or numb. It's just disinterested or mindless. And so he called these three conditions the three poisons. They're sometimes called the three defilements of craving, aversion, and delusion. So craving is an unchecked desire or wanting circumstances to align with our own views. Aversion is the pushing away of experiences that don't fit with our perspectives or expectations. And mindlessness or disinterested is numbing out to people, places, and ideas that we ignore or deny as having any value or merit. So your practice is to sense at a really intimate level, with this generous, curious attention and investigation, what is my mind grasping at right now? What is my mind repelling? What does it want to stop? What does it want to be rid of? Maybe pain, discomfort, maybe a period of unsettling boredom. How am I reacting to these experiences moment to moment? Is this reaction familiar? Is it a pattern? So you need curiosity to investigate your mind. So I want to give you a simple example of how this curiosity, just recently, I just thought of an example of how I use curiosity to investigate my own mind. So I was sitting in my bedroom upstairs in the sun, and I was having a very relaxed read, and I was feeling really content, and the sun was shining in through my big window. My mind was very calm. And then suddenly I noticed my mind becoming agitated. And then I got interested, how did that happen? How did I move from annoyance in the mind so quickly when it was only peaceful a few moments ago? So this interest, this curiosity we call mindfulness, wants to know what is happening in my mind right now. Yeah. So in that moment, I noticed something very interesting. My mind became curious about what had happened. It wanted to know about itself. It wanted to know why it had lost its peacefulness and had become agitated. The mind wanted to investigate the mind. So it backed up a little bit and began to ask questions. It wanted to learn and know the truth. Because of that, it began to gently watch this feeling of agitation unfold. So as I continued to sit, I was able to watch annoyance operating in my mind. So there needs to be a curiosity to watch that event and not get sucked into it. On one hand, my mind was trying to enjoy reading. On the other hand, my neighbours were next door, were making a lot of very loud noise. And I wanted them to stop. And I saw my mind complaining about the noise and complaining that I couldn't read peacefully. The observing, curious mind saw everything that was going on in the mind. So can you see how expansive that view is? That the mind sees what the mind is doing. And it saw itself going back and forth between those two sides for a while. It saw the dissatisfaction and it saw the aversion in the mind. Now, I could get very interested in the neighbours and the noise and how dare they, what are they doing, what's the time? But I was more interested in the aversion in my own mind. So in this moment of insight, the mind didn't favour one experience, reading or the noise. It was able to hear the sounds as just sounds without buying into the story the mind was telling about good sounds, bad sounds. And at that point, the mind stopped both its craving for silence and its aversion to the voices of the people next door. So instead, my mind, just remained in the middle and continued watching with curious attention. The mind simply saw the origin of the suffering in the clinging and the aversion, and then the mind was easy again. That is the third noble truth, the truth of cessation, of freedom. And the Buddha called this vital quality of inquiring in the mind Dharma Vichaya, which means a mind that naturally investigates reality. It's a mind that studies itself by asking questions to discover what is happening and what is happening internally in this body, in this mind. The mind wants to know the nature of the three unwholesome poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. And I think often practitioners pay attention to mindfulness and right effort, but they forget to practice Dharma Vichaya. They forget to investigate and ask questions about experience in order to learn about their own mind. But mindfulness really is about understanding. You have to use wise thinking to decide how to handle things. Am I going to go downstairs? Am I going to go next door? Am I going to throw my book down? Am I going to have a tantrum? You can't limit your practice to continuously being aware. It's not enough, the Buddha said. You need to be curious and see what's happening in your own mind. So I wonder, do you get interested in your own mind during the day? That is the yogi's path. Yeah. When you feel contracted and uneasy, when you're triggered by something, the practice is to notice you've been triggered, get interested in which poison is touching the mind. Is it wanting something to happen? Is it wanting something to stop happening? Is there clinging? Is there aversion? Is there wanting something to stop, to disappear, to end? And if there's clinging or aversion, the instruction is to notice the bodily sensation of that push and pull, because if there's aversion, it will be in your body. If there's clinging, wanting something to happen that's not happening, it will be in your body. So that is the curiosity. You pay attention. Is it in your belly, your neck, your throat, your eyes, your head? Is it here? Is it moving? We really want to crawl inside and live inside the body while this is happening. And we hardly ever do this. We hardly ever stay close enough to experience to really investigate what's happening in our mind and body, because we get so caught up in the external experience, the other person, what they said, what they did, how they should be acting, what they're doing, are they contributing or not? We keep looking in the wrong direction for our freedom. And this is so true with people that we're familiar with. We believe we know them. We can predict what they're going to do. We've known them so long, there's not much really more to learn about them. They don't surprise us anymore. There's no more intrigue about them. I used to do couples counselling. I don't do it anymore. Say no more. And in countless sessions sitting with couples, I got really interested in the more contented couples. And I really saw that they were thriving because they were still curious about one another. They didn't claim to know the other person. They didn't pretend to know what the other person was about to say. And I did hear a lot of the opposite, where people go, oh, I knew he was going to say that. There's no curiosity anymore. There's no more superpower. The curiosity is to see the second noble truth, that the discomfort is there because within our own mind there is this pushing and pulling with experience. The other person is not our problem. It's our minds pushing and pulling them into a different shape. The suffering is not necessarily coming from the other person, from the event that's unfolding. This is a powerful insight. This is a great freedom to see where suffering originates. And as we practice this over and over again, it becomes a reflex. We can simply ask ourselves, what am I clinging to now? This is one of the most useful investigation questions. You can ask yourself when you're stressed, when you're annoyed, when you're tense, when you're feeling bitter, mean-spirited, what am I clinging to now? And we can see more clearly with this investigating mind the constant and often subtle fabrication or narrative of what should be happening according to my agenda. We all have an agenda. We go out into the world with an agenda. This should be happening. And so much of that is out of our awareness. We're so often perceiving the world through unrecognized and unchecked filter of our own conditioning, with fixed, rigid ideas about who we are and what we should expect. So it really is such a superpower to get really interested in repetitive thoughts and beliefs that spin around in your own mind and see them for what they are, this layer of story the mind weaves that actually separates us from the isness of the moment. The practice of interest in our inner world, which is really the heart of insight or vipassana practice, is a direct meeting with ourselves, just as we are, the raw truth of ourselves in any given moment, whether there's pleasant or unpleasant, greed or aversion, and never making it, any of it, bad or wrong. To be mindful and to be interested. When the mind perceives something as unpleasant, to feel that quality in your body, to feel the quality of when you're anxious, get interested in the thoughts that are spinning when you're angry, to recognize with interest the reactivity to the unpleasant, to see the mind wrestling with reality. The Buddha points to this wrestling as where we tighten and construct a sense of self, a sense of I, me, mind, a sense of self that feels righteous, uneasy, uncertain, trying to grasp at control and certainty. And what we really need is to relax with what we see, what we feel, and what we notice, and not get dramatic about what we notice in ourselves. It's really welcoming everything with a childlike interest. It's a huge relief to rest in this open space of receptive interest, grasping at nothing, rejecting nothing, and curious about everything. And meditation allows us to relax and stay interested in what this mind is doing without slavishly acting out of our habits, nor struggling to change yourself. When we're curious, when we're welcoming, we are open, we're loose, and we're less interfering. There's less measuring of where I am and where I think I should be. Curiosity gives rise to a great undoing, a release from clinging and allowing and receiving nakedly your life. Receiving sounds, sensations, other people's comments, events we didn't see coming, without our mind interfering with the flow of it all. So never assume anything, and be willing to change your mind about everything you thought was right. Stay curious. Okay. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you for your kind listening.